Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be building up a mighty forge in Valheim. So the inspiration for this build was a Viking era steeple church that you can find in Norway. I saw it, really wanted to incorporate it somehow, and I figured it'd be really cool to have that as a blacksmithing haven. I mean, you gotta worship the craft, right? So that's ended up what I did. I built up something that looked as close as possible to a steeple church. I'm not 100% happy with it, the way that the roof comes together, but I think that's just because how I'm usually not happy with how roofs usually look in this game, and nothing's changed. But at any rate, I do the best I can. So this build does have one kiln, one blast furnace, one smelter, and then a fully upgraded black forge and regular forge fully upgraded as well. Now, this is a small square. It is pretty cramped on the inside, not gonna lie. Once you get all that stuff in there, it is very much just everything's kind of in your face. But that works to your advantage too, because you're in here trying to craft, right? You don't have to be moving around a whole bunch to try to get to everything. You can run in real quick, be smelting stuff, and be working on whatever you need to be working on. Now, the other side of this is that on the server, whenever we actually do build it up, I'm probably going to have a smelting area separate. So I'll keep the one each in here, but in the actual smelting area or building that I'm probably going to build up, the foundry is probably what I'll call it. I am more than likely going to have one blast furnace and one furnace dedicated for each metal type, and then one kiln dedicated to each one of those. So I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but let's just say that equates to 3 smelters and 3 blast furnaces. I know that's off. I can't think of all the metals right now off the top of my head, but you would have 3 of each, and then you would have 6 kilns, each one dedicated to one of those. In that regard, you can constantly be smelting whatever you need to be smelting, because there's a lot of times right now on our current server, we only have 2 of each, and it seems like more often than not, you're waiting to smelt. Now, are you waiting because, oh, I have too much of this one metal? Or are you waiting to smelt because you're trying to do too many metals at once? I know early game, it's usually you have too many metals, like different metals at once, but in later game, it's usually because, oh, we finally got some flame metal, we need to smelt it. It's like, well, I only have this one smelter, I guess we'll check again tomorrow. In that case, I'm sure that we'll probably just fill all 3 of them out, if that's the number there are, with it and move on. But that might be a build I look at doing next. So at the moment, I'm trying to figure out how the outside of this building is going to look. I don't know why, but I was really wanting to avoid putting the wooden decorations on either side of the window. I was like, I really just want the wood lips on the top and bottom, and I don't want the sides. If you don't have the sides, then it doesn't cover up how stone is wonky. It's not straight. So marble is straight when you place it, but stone has character. Let's put it that way. And my issue with it is I didn't want the beams on the other side of the window, so I had to manually place the interior decorations in the spot that at least cover up the most area, because if I snapped them, then there would be a huge gap on one side more often than not. At this point, I'm trying to figure out also how the mallets that are part of the forge hung up above the kiln. I was trying to decide how I wanted to like incorporate that. I didn't know if I wanted the kiln to be surrounded by a wood frame and then have that like attached to it. I decided that looked ridiculous, and I'm just gonna have a wooden beam going across and we'll attach it that way is what I came to. And also decided I wanted this place to be a dirt floor. I want to say that's the right move. I was considering leaving the stone, but I kind of like that there's a difference from the outside and inside as far as a floor texture. I do go in and put rugs in afterwards, but I think this looks right. Either you have a stone floor or you have a dirt floor. A wood floor doesn't make sense, right? Because it's just gonna burn. And I don't know, it kind of gives it a more rustic feeling, right? A lot of these forges probably were dirt floors anyway. A lot of the old medieval forges were actually outside and they were dirt floors. Because again, wood probably is gonna burn it. Because you're gonna have embers and stuff flying out of it as you're smithing as the fire is going. If anything, it's gonna get singed all the time for sure. So at this point, I am starting my nightmare, which is how I'm going to do this roof, because the steeple chapels that I've seen, they're in Norway. The first floor has a roof opening in every direction, and then the upper levels have an A-frame where it's only open in 2 directions, and it kind of copies that direction going up to like the 3rd, 4th, 5th level. But roofs are wonky in Valheim, and I didn't know how I wanted to do it. So I do end up doing a double roof on this one too, which was a nightmare because obviously this roof's already a nightmare, so why would it be any easier? Again, it's one of those roofs where if you don't look at it too hard, it looks nice. If you really go and inspect it, you'll be like, what the fuck happened here. But anyway, I'm going through and putting in my trim. I'm trying to start to use the core wood more. I have this reluctance all the time to use core wood. I don't know why. I just don't think aesthetically I like the way core wood looks with the aesthetic of the builds I'm going for. I think it works better here than in some of my other builds because this place does look a lot more rustic and the core wood kind of accentuates that a little bit. The only problem is it's like I didn't really want to continue the core wood throughout the entire build because there's not enough pieces to really facilitate that. So it's only the first floor that has core wood, but it is framing all the walls and supporting the first level roof on the inside. You'll see in a bit. But after that, it's just, you know, the regular wooden beams because, yeah, I don't know. I still have an aversion to it. What can I say? And it doesn't help that anytime you do these walls, they're going to have that wooden beam on there anyway. So there's already like this weird aesthetic issue where even if I wanted to build it up in core wood, at some point there's going to be a regular wooden beam because of the roof, or sorry, the wall, because of the wall. Now again, you actually don't have to do this, but any angled roof is obviously going to have some way to seal off the angles, right? There's ways around it. Most of them are manual placement of things. Like you can manually place these beams to make a wall, more or less, in which case that might be the way to go about it. You have your core wood going up to the steeple and then you just fill that gap with the wooden beams to make it look like a paneled wall. And I really struggled with this too. I knew I wanted a grate more or less to make a window. It's so close. We have, you know, a 2x2 like is what I just used. We have the 2x1s which are tall. I want a 1x2. Honestly, I want one that's 1 tall and 2 wide because there's a lot of time. I mean, we have one. Don't get me wrong, we do have one, but it's a very flourished panel. It's the tree. It's very fancy looking and didn't fit the aesthetic for this building, so I didn't use it because again, I was looking for more of a grate and less of a window. And that tree is more of a window. I ended up just going with the 2x2 little wooden decoration, and it doesn't actually reach the top because obviously there's a triangle. I can't really notice when I'm looking at it, especially when I get the second roof on. Maybe you can. Again, it was kind of like this is the best case scenario because I also didn't want to stick the wooden beam across the top. So, and the other good news is the middle of this little panel that I was using kind of does like a little circle in the middle, which makes it look like it's reaching up to that opening anyway. So it kind of works out. Yeah. This is me realizing how I probably just fucked up. Now I think I do go and remove the little cross sections, the little X's, and just put in a beam that's like clipping back into the wall because obviously this is going to look kind of weird and there's no getting around how weird this is going to look. I will say I wish I built this up another half wall higher than what I ended up doing, because that would have given me a little more flexibility on the second layer roof. Right now, it kind of almost clips the first floor roof, and I think another like half wall up would have been perfect, honestly. If I do end up using this version of the Smithy, that might be what I end up doing. Now again, I am doing 2 different Smithies right now. You can see the one right there that's next to this building. There's another video on that one. This is the other concept. So one is more of a storefront Smithy, and this is more of like a tribal gathering place Smithy, where it's not so much like selling the weapons, but more about the act of building stuff. It makes more sense for my server to have this version of a Smithy, especially considering that the other Smithies, essentially the storefront will never be entered. There's no reason for anybody on the server to actually go into that room. It's purely aesthetic. So long story short, this one makes way more sense for the server, but I think the other one looks way more polished compared to this one. That might be on me. Obviously, if something doesn't look polished, you should probably polish it. I know that was a horrible analogy, but you get the point. At any rate, we're basically done with the roof at this point. I'm building up the walls for the moment. I also realized that, I don't know why I ever thought about it before, but it's always bothered me whenever you have a roof ending like this, that it's not sealed off, but you can put the little 1x1 panel manually into that slot perfectly, and it covers that hole. There's been so many times where I've rebuilt a roof because it ended in the natural point, like the building piece that is a point on itself, so that it would be 2 pieces coming together at the point instead, so I could avoid having that little hole at the top. Never thought about just manually placing a fucking panel in there. I'll be doing that from now on. And here I'm putting in some more windows up in the top. I kind of struggled with this. I think I ended up going with I ended up just copying. I don't like the way that those look, honestly, next to each other. I like the way they look on their own, but but next to it, there's an awkward gap that it creates. And I also didn't want to put up beams in the middle of it because I wanted it to be like one open paneling, but yeah, it's pretty awkward. So at this point, I'm trying to center a chimney in this room. I built a chimney up to make sure it fit, and that's what all that crumbling is right now, but I wanted something centered on what would be the large fire pit that you can build. So this is me trying to figure out how to cheat the system, more or less, because I wanted a chimney that was perfectly square, that was going to go up through the roof where we already have an opening, but I also wanted it to be able to be centered on the fire pit. So it took me some finagling, but I finally got it. This is actually the second time I built it. Real funny story. Once the fire pit's actually built and I lit it and I went up top to finish off the chimney, I fell in it and burned to death because I couldn't get out. Now, obviously this build was going to need a little more support. The chimney was way too tall to support itself. So I did have to go in and add 4 ironwood posts to kind of support it a little bit better. And that's all it needed, was just the 4. So that is another consideration, but the building can be started before that. Like, I'm not going to have these Ashlands windows. Obviously there's going to be an open window until I can get that paneling and put it in. And really, I don't need the chimney, more or less. This building is tall enough, and with this many windows, the smoke would escape. So the chimney's really just, you know, an aesthetic addition than being something actually needed. So right here, I'm trying to basically line up where the fire pit's going to be, which obviously takes some finagling because nothing can be easy. Because essentially the fire pit is 3 blocks wide. So I had to find a way to center a brick, which took a hot second, but with enough, honestly, the new stone like pillars are so good for finding the halfway points on a brick. Insanely good for finding the halfway points. A lot of my builds, if I needed to find the center of a brick, I was using the new stone pillars, which is kind of an issue because they're from Ashland, which means a lot of these builds, I don't even really know if I could build until Ashlands, just because of the nature of it. I really wanted to avoid using pillars, and I can't remember if I broke all the pillars and just used the blocks. The pillars are so janky. Like, if stone is janky, then okay, I do get rid of it good. The pillars are just wonk. They look like wet noodles. I don't know why that the visual for the pillars is so bad, but they don't mesh to anything either. So if you're building up stone, you can see how it's kind of wavy, but if you put another piece of stone next to it, it snaps together and kind of fills the gap, except for the stone pillars. They don't. They just leave a gap. I don't know why. It looks so bad. So basically, any chance I get, I avoid the stone pillars like the plague because it just irritates me. Now with this, the interior build is basically done with the chimney being reinforced. So again, I kind of had the problem of I really wanted some of these bits to be intermingled. I wanted the anvil to be between the forge and the black forge. I wanted certain things to be certain places. Obviously, they can only be so far away. And again, same problem as last smithy that I built. Kiln is in the way for the most of it. Why I keep putting a kiln in the middle of my smithing areas is beyond me, because every single time it is in the way. But essentially, on the right side, you have your black forge. On the left side, you have your regular forge. All of their upgrades are accounted for, so this is a fully upgraded forge and black forge. And again, obviously, going through a new playthrough, we're not even gonna have the black forge. So a lot of this room is gonna be empty from the get-go. It's just going to be the regular forge in here. And then as we get further along in the game, obviously we'll be able to build the black forge in here. So there will be a spot designated for it, but as a fresh game, the place is gonna be kind of empty. I guess technically a lot of my builds will be that way, now I'm thinking about it, because I am planning to start a fresh server with fresh characters to do a full playthrough in. So I do use a lot of stuff from like later in the game, especially when I get to the point where I'm decorating, but it is what it is. That's kind of the fun of it, right? You can kind of build stuff up as you go, so you always have something to do. I burned down the middle of this room so many times. So I was really trying to make it look like there was swords being heated in the forge in the middle, the fire pit, and constantly the fire was catching the little item holders on fire all the time. In the end, I did finally find a spot that they would stop catching fire. It had to be like 4 times that this place caught fire. And I say this place caught fire. All that really happened was the ground outside the fire pit would get scorched, and the anvil and the core wood would kind of light on fire for like a split second, causing a tenth of damage or something, and then go out. So really the only damage that was happening was the floor, which I kind of like the burned aesthetic of the floor in front of the forge. I think it makes total sense. And I might actually fake that more often. Like underneath the black forge and the regular forge, I might force a fire there just so there's like a singed ground there. I think it looks a lot better and kind of breaks up the texture of the floor in here a little bit. But point being, it took me a while to find the right placement of these item stands to, you know, make it look like you're heating weapons without the item holder to just catch fire. I'm copying over a lot of the decorations I did in the first one, right? So I did that little fan of blades again with the shield on top and the little rabbit skin underneath for this table because I wanted there to be somewhere that some weapons were displayed. I wish this game just had a weapon rack, a weapon display. Now, I don't know if that'd be an Oriental one or, you know, a European one. I would imagine this be a European where it's basically like wood going up on your side and 2 posts at the top and you like slit weapons into it more or less. But just something standing that holds weapons in it would be amazing. Maybe it's an item holder that has, you know, 4 item slots in it and you can just kind of drop weapons into it and it slots into it. Or maybe it's done like the mannequins where you can kind of mount something to it into like one of the 4 slots. I don't know. I just want something that's not an item holder that looks like more of its own structure. Because I've tried building what I'm talking about with item holders, but it's so bulky looking that it doesn't look right. Yeah, this is one of the many times I catch this place on fire. And look, see, honestly, the burned floor here looks really good. So again, that might be something I just kind of do in here underneath both the forges. Like maybe the back end of this room is just singed like this. I think it would look really good. And the other thing I really wanted when I was thinking of this building and having this giant stone pillar in the middle was just for this stone pillar to be covered in shields, just absolutely covered. I honestly didn't do it enough for what I'm visualizing. So I'm doing the build the final time. I'm probably gonna put way more mounts on the wall or on the chimney and just absolutely go crazy with it because I don't even want to really see the chimney. In what I'm imagining, I don't even want to see the chimney. I just want to see just shields plastered over this thing. I think it would look really cool, especially if some of them are actually painted. I think it would look really nice. Now, again, this is going to take a lot of resources just to do something aesthetic, but hey, sometimes you gotta spend money to look good. I sealed off a lot of the openings to this because I feel like that's how it would be. On one side, obviously you have where you can put in coal, and on the other sides where you're working. On the sides, you wouldn't be doing anything, so they're just sealed off. I didn't just want them open on every side. I don't know if they really should be. With these last few shields put up, we are basically done with the inside. All that's really left at this point is to finish off the roof. So this is actually probably where I fall into the chimney and burn to death. I also wanted banners in here. I always feel like banners are just awkward to use because they flow in the wind, right? So if you just put it on a wall, it's gonna clip, especially on stone. So trying to figure out how to put them up on walls is always kind of like the weirdest thing to me. And I might do this actually. I know I stuck a wolf up there and it looked weird, but I probably put a shield up there like I did on the first smithy that I built and have like a shield coming through like a proper banner. But yeah, all that's left at this point is to build up the chimney and then put on the facade of a second roof. So yeah, I did end up cutting the footage of me falling in there. Did not expect it. Essentially what happened was I was trying to get up the roof. It says it's the more dramatic angled roof. You slide down it and I was trying to get on the edge and ended up just jumping straight in instead of landing on the edge. And even here I ended up putting a grating so I wouldn't fall on again because I almost did it twice. And I was like, nope, we're gonna put a grate down for right now until we get this roof up. We're gonna have a grate. Now this roof I redid several times, this 3rd tier roof. I couldn't get to look right. It took me a while to realize the reason I didn't like the way it looked was because it was flush on the ends over the stone, and I think that's what really bothered me. So instead of having the roof that has the natural point, I ended up using 2, just full sections up against each other so that it would extend past the stone, because from the ground looking up, it looked receded. It didn't look flush, it looked receded from the wall, and it just looked so awkward. This ended up being another build where I might have put too many dragons on it. It's not as bad as the first smithy, but I did put a lot of dragons on this. Basically any point of the A-frame roofing, I stuck a dragon every time without fail. And the other interesting thing is this building is so tall, it hits snow. I didn't realize what was happening at first because I was like, why is it blinding up here? Why is it so bright up here that it's like ruining the texture? I'm like, no, that's not light reflecting. Well, I mean it is, but the reason it's so bright is because it's white. And I was like, oh wow, this is snow. I've built high enough that there's just snow accumulating on my roof. You can't really see it too well from the ground, but it was one of those oddities that I was just like, that's interesting. Not planned. I don't even really like it. There's no snow in this area at all, and it's like randomly on the top of this roof, there's a little bit of snow, and it's like, especially since it's like the top of the chimney too, so there has to be a lot of heat coming out right here. You wouldn't really think there'd be snow there to begin with. But here we're trying to put on the second roof. I'm trying to find a way to to get it to snap just right, because the idea of it is it snaps to a point where it's above the trim but not floating above it. So it takes some finagling. I'm not great at doing it just yet, but I'm getting better at it. It's an art for sure. Also, I don't know what causes it, but if you're standing at the point of a roof, I don't know if your character has an idle motion or what, but they slowly slide off of it. Like, even if you're at a beam and you're standing on a beam like I am now, there'd be times where I was just standing here working and my character would just fall. I'm like, I didn't walk anywhere. I turned to my camera. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe when you turn the camera, your character shuffles a little bit and that shuffle knocks you off of what you're standing on. I don't know. It happened more times than I care to admit. It was rather irritating. But as you can see there a second ago, you can see how me extending the roof down a little bit, it starts to cut into the first tier roof. And that's what I think I need to avoid by, building up this mill section a half a wall higher. So this roof just isn't going into the first one. I think on the actual steeple churches in Norway, they do intersect kind of like that, but I don't know if I like the way it looks for this build specifically. I also noticed that I don't like the way the dragon heads snap on anything, so it seems more often than not I'm trying to manually snap them or fake it. I realized I could stick a beam inside the roof that's just floating in there and then snap the dragon heads to it, and it looks so much better. The dragon heads, the raven, the wolf, all of them snap so awkwardly. It's not even funny. All of them were literally made to just be manually snapped somewhere because otherwise it just doesn't work and it doesn't look right. Yeah, you can already see from here that it doesn't quite look right on that top section. It just seems very wonky, and when you're looking up at it, it seems like the roof is receded. And I go about trying to fix this a couple of ways. I couldn't quite place why it looked wrong to begin with. I was like, maybe it's because it's stone. Maybe because there's stone visible, it's just a different color, so it looks weird. And admittedly, it kind of does. So I do put paneling on the outside of it that's wood to kind of compensate for that. And I think it does look better with the paneling, but it didn't obviously fix the problem, which ended up being the roof needs to extend over the edging more instead of being flush with it. And here is the real nightmare that I was having, was doing this part of the roof specifically. Because again, I wanted the roof to have a double layer, and I wanted that second layer to stick out. Problem with that being is trying to snap things as they go down to these angled sections. I end up getting it to where it looks right, but I didn't realize if you don't stick on end caps, and by end caps I mean like the little wooden trim at the ends, that a lot of these tiled roofs have very wonky pieces that stick out of them. You can kind of see where it like juts out and kind of like a zigzag, but what's also happening is that the top tile or shingle, whatever you want to call it, isn't a full diamond. It's obviously just a triangle. So there's a very harsh edge that happens at the top of each one of those sections. And for whatever reason, the corner piece has a much harsher edge than that. So it's like so blatantly obvious where you use that corner piece. I had to manually place it. If you manually place the corner, you can sink it in to where it looks right. Feels like it snaps in the wrong place, in all honesty. And this was another spot where I had to like manually place the beams because obviously it didn't know if it should snap to, the left ceiling part or the right ceiling part. But yeah, you can see here, it looks so weird. It sticks out so far, but it's snapped to the roof. Like, it's not snapped to anything else. It's properly snapped, but it has that weird triangle that sticks out way further, and then the wood sticks out so far. So I ended up just manually placing all of them. And manually placing is definitely a way to go because it looks so much better when they're manually placed. You get rid of the weird little corner, how far it's sticking out. I don't know why it's so awkward looking, but it definitely seems like they don't snap properly on their own. Now the underside looks worse, I'll admit, but the top looks better. So you win some, you lose some. Really though, I didn't even notice this until just now that it did that to begin with. That the wood underneath obviously wasn't snapped. But yeah, too many dragons, not enough dragons. And here I'm messing with that chimney again, which first step I put on the wood paneling. One final time I build this upper tier. I made it a little bit taller too because I was using the half pillars. I decided that I really just wanted the full height. So instead of having it the pointed section roof, I just did two pieces next to each other so that it would have that slight overlap going over the edges, which really helped a lot. And for reference, I was using that X to line up that beam in the middle so that it would be centered so I could stick these dragons on your side where they're actually inlaid. But yeah, that is pretty much the build done and done. At this point, we're going to go into a walkthrough and kind of look at everything in its finished state. So here is our forge. This is what it looks like upon entrance. It is kind of in that style of the Norse steeple churches in Norway. You come in, you have your iron stands, you have your chimney for the forge covered in shields. You have some weapons laid out on a table for anybody to come and grab. In the back, you have your black forge with all of its upgrades and the regular forge with all of its upgrades, and a little crafting area sitting in the back to build up your weaponry. This build came out pretty nice. I like the way it looks. It is a bit cramped, but all in all, not too bad. Again, is it better than the original smithy I built? I don't know. I might leave that up to all of you. So that is the end of this build. Again, I built this one after I built an original smithy, and I'm probably going to leave it up to the community to figure out which one I use in the end product for the server we're going to be building up. But that is it for today. If there's anything I did that you don't agree with, let me know down in the comments. Let me know if there's something you want to see built. But at any rate, that is it for today. So I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.